Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show, your daily dive into the news. It is Thursday, and oh, what a Thursday it is. There's a lot we need to talk about today, starting with this. Y'all, the all-new Pentagon Propaganda Corps, they're here. They are reporting for duty. Because if you didn't see, you had Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell very excited, so excited to announce the next generation of the Pentagon Press Corps. And as far as why you're getting this next generation of pretty much everyone is new, almost. They were more than happy to agree to a laundry list of rules and restrictions that were rejected by virtually every other major media organization. We're talking from the New York Times and Washington Post to Fox News and Newsmax. And even Fox denouncing this policy, saying it's without precedent and threatens core journalistic protections. Right? And you had independent organizations like the National Press Club explaining, if the news about our military must first be approved by the government, then the public is no longer getting independent reporting. It is getting only what officials want them to see. That should alarm every American. But still, you had Parnell again, very excitedly and proudly here, claiming that over 60 journalists have signed the pledge and they're joining the new press corps. And that includes only 26 individuals across 18 outlets who had previously been a part of the press corps. And so now, I shit you not, the New York Times has been replaced by Lindell TV, right? The streaming service run by the fucking MyPillow guy. And also a part of this great Pillow Army, you have Frontlines, which is the media brand associated with Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA. You have Timcast, the podcaster, and also marching rank and file. You had right-wing news sites like Gateway Pundit, The National Pulse, and Human Events. And so with this, there was, no shortage of people going, really? The Gateway Pundit? Didn't they recently have to settle a defamation lawsuit related to baseless allegations of election fraud? And really, Mike Lindell? Fucking Mike Lindell? Did someone smoke crack other than Mike Lindell? Now, something I will say is it's not like all the journalists who've left the Pentagon, they've stopped covering the US military. Right? Seemingly, they're gonna still try to do their job, get information out to the people that wasn't first approved by the Pentagon. But, no doubt, losing their official access, it's gonna make their jobs harder. Right? And you're hearing no shortage of that, including from longtime defense reporter Barbara Starr, who also said the real price is paid by the American people and the American military families. Military families who have their sons and daughters serving. They want to know everything and they want to know it fast. Right? And so it's really hard to see this as anything other than, just another Trump attack on press freedom, as well as, more efforts to build an alternative information ecosystem. Because it's not like this is some random outlier thing or it happened in a bubble. They're filing lawsuits against and restricting access for what's seen as mainstream media outlets. Right? And they've been giving supportive right-wing reporters and influencers unprecedented access to White House briefings, including with Trump himself and even cabinet-level trips abroad. And so this Pentagon situation, it's really just the latest version of what we've been seeing here. And we're gonna have to see what this looks like moving forward. Because while this is technically different than a state-run news and propaganda network, it really every day seems to be running more and more parallel to that. Right? It seems state-supported, state-incentivized, state-propped up. But hey, we are gonna have to wait to see how this plays out. And as with everything, I am open to being wrong. Maybe Mike Lindell TV will hold them to account. But then next up in the news, this insider trading NBA situation is crazy. Because you actually had the FBI this morning laying out 2 major illegal gambling operations. And it allegedly involved players like Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier, former Cavalier Damon Jones, Trailblazers coach Chauncey Billups, and even members of the Mafia. And we gotta break down both of these cases. And so the first, it involves illegal betting on NBA games, with a US attorney describing it as one of the most brazen sports corruption schemes since only sports betting became widely legalized in the United States. Right? And Terry Rozier was one of the people that was charged in this scheme, where participants were accused of aiding sports bettors by exploiting confidential and insider information about NBA teams and players. So we're talking about information like when a player might be sitting out of a future game, when they take themselves out for injuries, things like that. And that information, it allowed people in the group to place prop bets both online and in casino sportsbooks. And according to the FBI, most of the bets succeeded.
They placed wagers on unders on players to score less, rebound less, assist less, using information that was not yet public. In some instances, players altered their performance or took themselves out of games to make sure that those bets paid out.
Right, the commissioner of the NYPD, they're also detailing the time that Rozier allegedly did this in 2023 while playing the Hornets, right, saying he let people know that he planned on leaving the game early with a supposed injury.
Using that information, members of the group placed more than $200,000 in wagers on his under statistics. Rozier exited the game after just 9 minutes and those bets paid out, generating tens of thousands of dollars.
With gains then allegedly being delivered to Rogier's home. And these allegations are from 2020 to 2024. And with that, you had officials saying that at least one time the participants used threats to obtain information, right? Allegedly using gambling debts a player Jonte Porter had against him. And so with this, you had Rogier and others being charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and conspiracy to commit money laundering, right? And then you had people like Damon Jones, who was charged in this case, and also he was one of the handful that was charged in the other. There was some overlap between the two, and in that one, it involved illegal and rigged poker games organized by major mob families of La Cosa Nostra. And that indictment says that starting in 2019, the conspirators started manipulating poker games, right? Games that the victims thought might be illegal, but that they were straight, right? They were above board, right? Not rigged. But in reality, the accused people here were allegedly working together on cheating teams, right? And so they'd use wireless technology to read the cards that were dealt in each hand and then relay that information to each other to cheat.
They used custom shuffling machines that could read the order of cards, barcoded decks, and hidden cameras built into tables and light fixtures. Victims believed that they were sitting at a fair table. Instead, they were cheated out of millions. One victim in particular lost $1.8 million.
And there, you've got Chauncey Billups being accused of being on the cheating team, with officials saying that the crime families enlisted the help of notable NBA names to make the games appear more legitimate, and they'd get a portion of the profits. As far as the victims, their losses were allegedly above $7 million at these games. Games that also, I'll say, were played across the country, from New York to the Hamptons to Miami to Vegas. And then on top of that, these games, they allegedly led to other crimes like a gunpoint robbery and extortion. And so with all this, for his part, Billups was actually arrested for wire fraud conspiracy today, not long after coaching a season-opening game for the NBA. And now, all in all, across both of these cases, you have dozens of people being arrested, and you have way more than just NBA names here. Or I guess I should say former NBA names, because the organization announced that they've been placed on immediate leave, with the league saying that it takes the allegations seriously and, quote, the integrity of our game remains our top priority. And then with this, you also had FBI Director Kash Patel chiming in.
Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Cosa Nostra. It's not popular to go after some of the defendants that we went after today, but justice is served blindly. Let's not, mince words. This is the insider trading saga for the NBA. That's what this is. That's why we are going to take heat.
You have many right now wondering, is it even bigger than this? Because we're hearing all this today, but it also comes after a similar case was brought forward last year against NBA player Jonte Porter, with Porter pleading guilty to charges, saying that he left games early with him claiming injury, so people knew that they'd win bets where he would underperform. And apparently with what we're seeing today, it's been a long time coming. For the investigations into these two cases, they reportedly date back years. Now, with all this so far, Billups' lawyer has not responded publicly to the allegations, but Rogier's has. We're saying in a statement that investigators appear to be taking the word of spectacularly incredible sources rather than relying on actual evidence of wrongdoing, saying Terry was cleared by the NBA and these prosecutors revived that non-case. Terry is not a gambler, but he is not afraid of a fight and he looks forward to winning this fight. With him also accusing the FBI of intentionally trying to embarrass Rogier and make a spectacle of his arrest by trying to stage a perp wall. And then with all that, as far as the public reaction, in addition to the damn that's crazy reaction, you have some saying, they think that this first case especially points to the larger issue with sports betting. With Representative Paul Tonko, for example, who's introduced legislation regarding the industry, calling this scandal an inevitable consequence of the unchecked explosion of the sports betting industry, and then adding, the constant unfettered access to sports gambling destroys public trust in the game while having dire consequences for countless across our nation struggling with problem gambling. That said, I very much look forward to the 20,000 plus sports docs that are going to be made around this, especially for sports fans out there. While we wait to see what else comes out, how this plays out, I really would love to know your thoughts, opinions, and reactions here. Because obviously, these are standout situations, but I really think this is probably just the tip of the iceberg of what's been going on, not just in the NBA, but in sports across the board. In fact, it may even explain why the Jets haven't won a game. No, that's just because they're bad. Yeah, the Jets are just a cursed organization, and I refuse. I'm a good parent. I refuse to put that generational trauma on my children. And then I've got more news for you in just a minute, but first, let me say, the bank's idea of helping you, it's handing you a shovel and then charging you interest while you dig. But thanks to PDS Debt, today's sponsor, you can actually stop digging. Right? Debt, it's more common than you think, and PDS Debt, it helps you get out. And it's not just about numbers. It's a system that's built to keep you stuck. Every minimum payment, it's designed to stretch out your balance and drain your wallet. But PDS Debt flips that script. Right? They've already helped hundreds of thousands of people cut their debt, stop their harassing calls, and finally keep more of their own money. Credit cards, personal loans, medical bills, whatever's weighing you down, they've got custom solutions for it. And it's not a one-size-fits-all gimmick. They actually look at your situation and build a plan that fits you. No minimum credit score, no empty promises, just real people helping you find a real way out. And it works. A+ rated by the BBB, thousands of 5-star reviews on Google, and a 5 5-star Trustpilot rating. People trust PDS Debt because they actually deliver, right? And your debt, it doesn't define you. It's just a problem waiting for a plan. So hey, take 30 seconds and see what your plan looks like. Go get your free assessment at pdsdebt.com/DeFranco. That's pdsdebt.com/DeFranco, or just scan that QR code and take your first step toward being debt-free today. But then next up, we've got Elon Musk back in the news, not because he offered another woman his sperm or he was slapping more life-saving medication out of the hands of a small child in Africa, but rather because he needs $1 trillion so he can influence Tesla's army of robots. Because if you forgot, which is understandable because we live in a hellscape of just bad news, bad news, bad news, in the midst of that, we learned that Tesla is currently entertaining the idea of giving Elon Musk a compensation package that's worth $1 trillion. And yes, that's trillion with a T, right? In this package, it also includes a series of ambitious goals that he's got to meet in order to get the money, and it stretches over the course of 10 years. Right, and a very big part of this whole package is that it would push Musk's holdings in the company up to at least 25%. And the idea here is that it would incentivize Musk to keep his focus on his role at Tesla for years to come. Right, and if this is approved by the vote that's scheduled for November 6th, it'll be the largest compensation package in corporate history. And what you've been seeing is that you have Tesla executives pushing shareholders to approve this. We're saying if you don't vote this way, we don't know if Musk is going to maybe scale back his involvement or maybe even walk away entirely. Right, and also I'll say, unsurprisingly, one of the executives that is pushing the hardest for this is Musk. Right? In fact, he kind of hijacked the third quarter earnings call last night to plead his case. And in that, he condemned the proxy advisory firms that are against his potential pay package. Because Institutional Shareholder Services and Glass Lewis, they're both advising investors to reject this plan. Right, saying that there are unmitigated concerns with the magnitude and design of this package. Yes, that is also what she said. But also they said, yes, there are worries that this will dilute the shares owned by other people. Also, I'll say probably a thing that matters here is that while Musk is demanding $1 trillion, Tesla's profits have jumped off a cliff. Right, they're down by 37% since they cut their prices for their vehicles. Right, but Musk, he's taken issue with the pushback to him wanting this trillion, calling ISS and Glass Lewis, quote, corporate terrorists, and adding,
I just don't feel comfortable building a robot army and then, being ousted because of some asinine recommendations from ISS and Glass Lewis who have no friggin' clue.
Which is quick aside, I love that I live at a time where the sentence, I just don't feel comfortable building a robot army here, is a thing that is actually being said. And also I'll say, if you're like, what the hell was he even talking about? Right, in this meeting, Musk was making these grand proclamations about the future, including talking about robo-taxis and Tesla's Optimus project, or with the latter being the company's bipedal humanoid robot that's in development but not yet commercially deployed. And you've got Musk planning for Optimus to grow from being babysitters or factory workers to doctors.
Optimus will be an incredible surgeon. You can actually create a world where there is no poverty, where everyone has access to the finest medical care.
But if you don't give him $1 trillion, he says that's just not going to happen. We're saying that if he doesn't have the voting control at Tesla that comes with this, he's worried that he can be ousted after the company produces enough Optimus units.
If we build this robot army, do I have at least a strong influence over that robot army? Not control, but a strong influence. I don't feel comfortable building that robot army if I don't have at least a strong influence.
Again, quick aside, is anyone else concerned that anytime he talks about a group of robots or a batch of robots, he refers to them specifically as robot army? Like, it feels a little bit too on the nose to even call it foreshadowing. Like, maybe saying robot army by itself, that wouldn't raise a red flag, but when it's the guy that's gotten like super into right-wing politics and trying to get involved in governments all over the world, and he also for a little bit created Mecha AI Hitler, it hits a little bit different. But I will say, putting a pin in that tiny concern for now. What we do know is that, for Tesla to build up anything like an army, it would take a while. Right? I say that because the company reportedly set internal goals to produce 5,000 Optimus units by this year, but that was rolled back over the summer. Or with Musk saying there would be a production intent prototype ready by February or March, and full-scale production would start at the end of next year. But still, if everything stays on that timeline, next year in the grand scheme of things, pretty quick. And that is, this fight over control of this robot army isn't the only battle that Elon's engaged in right now, because he's also taken aim at the Trump administration over the future of NASA. Right, Musk, he has grand plans for the immediate future, launching a fleet of autonomous vehicles, turning millions of existing Teslas into self-driving cars, and taking astronauts to the moon, just to name a few things. But those big dreams, they have a few potential roadblocks, notably things like government regulations. And that includes from NASA, the US Department of Transportation, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Right, and all of those agencies are overseen by one guy, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. And while Musk, he appears not to be a fan, saying on X yesterday, having a NASA administrator who knows literally zero about rockets and spacecraft undermines the American space program and endangers our astronauts. Right, his beef with Duffy, it has a lot to do with the Artemis 3 mission, where they want to land a crewed rocket back on the moon. Because Duffy, he suggested that the mission would be open to other vendors besides SpaceX, even though the nearly $3 billion contract was awarded to them specifically. But the series of setbacks that SpaceX has dealt with on the front of delivering a functional moon lander, it has competitors like Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin waiting in the wings. Right, there's apparently a concern that SpaceX's Starship won't actually be able to hit the necessary milestone to be ready in time to beat China back to the moon. With one NASA employee saying, a lot of people have questions on that, and they haven't gotten into orbit to even demonstrate the refueling. If we had 5 more years, there would be less concern. But also, like, regardless of the Artemis mission, some investors are concerned that a public feud with the person heading up nearly all the agencies relevant to Musk's businesses isn't Elon's best move. Right, with, for example, Tesla investor Ross Gerber saying, you're essentially fighting with the guy in charge. It's so much self-sabotage. But also, I'll say, it's not just Duffy that Musk has fired harsh words at. But he's also had heated exchanges with trade advisor Peter Navarro, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and then of course there's the public fallout with Trump twice over. Then also is believed like maybe they fell back in love at Charlie Kirk's memorial, but maybe that was just a quick one-time thing. You know, ultimately, we'll see. It all seems to be in flux right now. But then next up today, we've got to talk about how this Trump, Colombia, Venezuela situation, it's just gone from bad to worse. Because our military just killed another 5 people in 2 strikes on boats that it said were trafficking drugs, and this now bring the total to 9 vessels that have been hit and at least 37 people killed. All while Trump and co, they've offered almost no details regarding the identities of people who have been killed or what drug trafficking organizations they allegedly belong to. Though also I'll say these latest strikes, they stand out because they targeted vessels in the Pacific for the first time rather than the Caribbean. And with that, you had Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth writing in a post announcing the first strike. Just as Al-Qaeda waged war on our homeland, these cartels are waging war on our border and our people, and adding, there will be no refuge or forgiveness, only justice. Right, with him then going on to say in his post announcing the second strike, these strikes will continue day after day. These are not simply drug runners. These are narco-terrorists bringing death and destruction to our cities. But then from there, we've got to talk about a few things, starting with, characterizing drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. Because for one, it is probably inaccurate since drug cartels are motivated by money and terrorists are by definition motivated by political, religious, or otherwise ideological goals. But also, just calling someone a terrorist, it doesn't actually give the administration any additional authority to use lethal force. Right? And then beyond that, as we've talked about before, there are just a multitude of reasons that you have many legal experts arguing that these strikes are almost certainly not permissible under US and international law. But also, even if a reasonable legal justification did exist, we have not actually seen solid evidence that these people who have been killed by our government are who the Trump administration claims they are. But we have seen people claiming that they are not those people. Or you've had a woman in a town on the Venezuelan coast telling the New York Times that her husband was just a fisherman, saying that he had gone to work one day and he just never came back. You also had the relatives of a 26-year-old from Trinidad and Tobago saying that he and a neighbor had been killed in an attack on October 14th, in which Trump claimed 6 male narco-terrorists were on board, but the family denied that he had been a trafficker. And then also, actually, 2 men survived a strike on October 16th, which ended up killing 2 other people. But then you had the Trump administration deciding to send those 2 back to their home countries, Colombia and Ecuador, rather than detaining them and bringing charges. And there you had experts arguing that Trump and co did it this way to avoid having their claims come under legal scrutiny. Right, noting that these cases ending up in court may have required the administration to disclose sensitive information and a possible lack of clarity around who was actually in the boat and what it was holding. And with that, in the case of the man from Ecuador, the government actually released him, saying there was no evidence that he had committed a crime, at least in the country. Right? And then as far as the Colombian government, they said, they have plans to prosecute the man, they got back, but also over the weekend, the country's president accused the US government of murder, right? With him claiming that one of the other strikes had actually killed a fisherman from the country with no ties to drug trafficking, and adding, the United States has invaded our national territory, fired a missile to kill a humble fisherman, and destroyed his family, his children. And then as far as Trump's response, he said that the US would slash assistance to Colombia and impose tariffs on imports from the country. Or with him writing on Truth Social that the Colombian president is an illegal drug leader, strongly encouraging the massive production of drugs, and adding that he better close up drug operations or the United States will close them up for him, and it won't be done nicely. And then, of course, within the next few days, you had the military launching another 2 strikes, which we were talking about at the beginning. But for now, that's where we are, though it is definitely not the end. I mean, just yesterday, you had Trump repeating that he may soon order strikes against drug trafficking targets on land. Though with that, he also said he would, quote, probably go back to Congress and explain before launching those strikes, while then also insisting that he doesn't actually need their permission to act. So everything feeling like it's inching closer and closer to some sort of tipping point. But then next up today in a different kind of news, you have investors all around the world right now panicking after they lost billions with Valve making an update to its game Counter-Strike 2. Because one of Counter-Strike's features, and really a feature of most Valve games, is that the cosmetic items in them, they can be traded on a marketplace for real world money. Well, technically the system's supposed to keep the money within Steam, which is Valve's extremely popular marketplace. The most common common way is to use other marketplaces that facilitate trades in exchange for cryptocurrencies and other money. And these trades, they can go for a lot of money. We're talking hundreds or even thousands of dollars, or in rare instances, way, way more. And so all of that, it brings us to the question of, well, what did Valve do? So this is gonna get a little technical, though, for I think CS2 fans is gonna kind of just scratch the surface, but just bear with me. So the cosmetic items in CS2, they usually revolve around skins for guns, knives, and player gloves. And the latter two generally get the highest prices. So knives, gloves, expensive, guns cheaper. And there's also a rarity system, though for simplicity's sake, we can kind of mostly ignore that, because really all you need to know is that Valve made it so that now, outside of a handful of exceptions, you can trade any 5 guns from the rarest covert tier for a chance at a knife or a glove. Instantly, the market went crazy with the price of knives and gloves crashing while the price of covert guns skyrocketed. And that was especially true for covert guns that were pretty unpopular and cheap, because it gave a massive opportunity for just this arbitrage, since you can trade 5 relatively cheap guns for the chance at an expensive knife, right? And even though knives and gloves, the prices there are falling, they're still pretty valuable. And so the thinking for many was, if you can buy coverts on the cheap and trade them up, you're still up in value. Right? And so with all this, you had some big creators in the space like XQC saying,
now everybody that has something has nothing. People that have nothing can have something. It's a market flip. Everything good is worthless now. So it's time to dump the skins. Only thing that are worth now is like actual rare guns.
Though there, I would say he might be wrong about the only thing worth something now are rare guns, because it's still a 5-to-1 ratio to get a knife or a glove. And actually there's an analysis out there claiming that if every single one of these covert guns in existence was used to trade up, it would only double the supply of the rare knives and gloves. And so that's not to say that there's not an impact here, but theoretically there will be some kind of equilibrium as the two prices kind of better reflect each other. But also, until we see what that is, in the meantime, a ton of money's been lost in the high-end collections, and a $2 billion loss has been seen across the board. But then from that, finally today, I want to end with one more thing and a little bit of self-promo. So one, let me say, depending on when you're watching this, probably last chance to get in on this last Beautiful Bastard drop. Right, my body hurts and I hate the government. Ghouls just want to have fun, emotionally gothic and emotionally exhausted. With those on select shirts, crews, and hoodies. Right, but then one more thing today is this bit from a conversation I had with John Lovett today on my podcast In Good Faith. If you want to watch the full thing, links of course in the description. But you can watch, listen, or subscribe to the full hour over on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. But I asked John, were we wrong about someone that we've both been critical of? Is it possible that we, and I'm using a collective we, have been underestimating Chuck Schumer's sense of strategy? Or no, completely different?
So, let me practice being generous. I'll try it. Not my instinct. So I was skeptical. First of all, before the shutdown, I was like really skeptical, and skeptical in all directions, by the way. Like, heard the arguments that said, hey, we should not do a shutdown. We don't have a path out of it. The minority party will lose. Respect that argument. We should shut the government down over healthcare. It's a hinge. It's a policy on which we have unity. It's one where we can maybe extract some concessions. That's the fight we should pick. And the argument says, like, they're shutting down the government. They're firing people willy-nilly. They've got masked agents on the street. They're disregarding Congress. They're doing open corruption. Healthcare, we have to fight this on everything, on democracy. We can't fund a government that is doing an authoritarian takeover. Respect that argument too. Healthcare felt like in the middle, felt like half a loaf, and then yet it seems to have really put Republicans on their heels. The country is seeing the Democratic argument. Blame is obviously going to be shared, but it's certainly not falling on Democrats the way Republicans would have predicted. And it's in a sense about prices and costs in a way that kind of resonates with the kind of underlying politics of Trump failing on these issues. And like that seems like it was the right fight. I get it, right? And that's a strategy coming from the leadership in the Congress. Good for them. The question has always been, like, as communicators, are these the best people to be the voice of an opposition? And I don't think there's anybody who thinks that, like, Chuck Schumer is the great voice of the Democratic opposition. So it's complicated, but look, when you ask people to fight and then they fight, you should say, okay, thanks. I'm glad you're doing that. I appreciate that. Like I don't think he's perfect. He hasn't stopped being Chuck Schumer in all the ways that he can be silly, and some of the videos don't work, and he's kind of goofy. He's an old school guy. He's like from the era of like the Sunday press conference to get in the Monday papers. It's just a different generation. But I'm glad they picked this fight, and I'm glad he's holding people together.
And that, my friend, is the end of this video. But of course, there's more just a click away. If you want to watch the full conversation, I got that brand new episode out of the In Good Faith podcast with John Lovett. Indoors, there's the newest Philip DeFranco show that you might not have seen yet, depending on when you got to this video. No matter what you do, I just want to say thank you for watching. I love you faces, and I'll see you next time.